Happy Hump Day. Welcome back to another live reading with Intentions of a Mastermind Book Club. We're reading Psycho-Cybernetics, the Deluxe Edition by Maxwell, Maltz. Oh, there we go. We're reading with our Intentions of a Mastermind Book Club members. And after we finish reading today's session, we're going to be talking about what we read. This is what we do every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Typically at 7 a.m. But life happens, we have to reschedule sometimes, and it's totally okay. So if you have any questions at any time, just leave them in the comments. Do not forget to subscribe. And of course, if you want to become a member, it is absolutely free. You just click the link in the description or the description, caption, whatever you want to call it, and then you can become a member. So today we're starting off chapter 4. Which is how to utilize the power of rational thinking. So we're all the way on page 73 already. I think we've only been reading for about 3 weeks. As you can see, we've talked about a lot so far. So I highly recommend you go back, rewatch, re-listen. And those chapter 2 and meditation sessions are coming soon. So let's jump into today's reading. Many of my patients are plainly disappointed when I prescribe something as simple as using their God-given power of reason as a method of changing negative beliefs and behavior. To some, it seems incredibly naive and unscientific, yet it does have one advantage: it works. And as we shall see later, it is based upon sound scientific findings. There is a widely accepted fallacy that rational, logical, conscious thinking has no power over unconscious processes or mechanisms, and that to change negative beliefs, feelings, or behavior, it is necessary to dig down and dredge up material from the unconscious. Your automatic mechanism, or what the Freudians called the unconscious, is absolutely impersonal. It operates as a machine and has no will of its own. It always tries to react appropriately to your current beliefs and interpretations concerning environment. It always seeks to give you appropriate feelings and to accomplish the goals which you consciously determine upon. Welcome in, guys. It works only upon the data which you feed it in the form of ideas, beliefs, and interpretations and opinions. It is conscious thinking, which is the control knob of your unconscious machine. It was by conscious thought, through perhaps irrational and unrealistic, that the unconscious machine developed its negative and inappropriate reaction patterns. And it is by conscious, rational thought that the automatic reaction patterns can be changed. The late Dr. John A. Schindler of the famous Moore Clinic, Moore, Wisconsin, won nationwide fame for his outstanding success in helping unhappy, neurotic people regain the joy of living and returning to productive, happy lives. His percentage of cures far exceeded that of psychoanalysis. One of the keys to his method of treatment was what he called conscious thought control. Regardless of the omissions and commissions of the past, he said, a person has to start in the present to acquire some maturity so that the future may be better than the past. The present and the future depend on learning new habits and new ways of looking at old problems. There simply isn't any future in digging continually into the past. The underlying emotional problem has the same common denominator in every patient. This common denominator is that the patient has forgotten how, or probably never learned how, to control his present thinking to produce enjoyment. Wow. Hello, I'm great. How are you? We're up to the next section called Let Sleeping Dogs Live. The fact that there are buried in the unconscious memories of past failures, unpleasant and painful experiences does not mean that these must be dug out, exposed, or examined in order to affect personality changes. As we have pointed out earlier, all skill learning is accomplished by trial and error, by making a trial, missing the mark, consciously remembering the degree of error, and making correction on the next trial, until finally a hit or successful attempt is accomplished. The successful rational pattern is then remembered or recalled and imitated on future trials. This is true for a man learning to pitch his horseshoes, throw darts, sing, drive a car, play golf, get along socially with other human beings, or any other skill. It is also true of a mechanical rat learning its way through a maze. Thus, all servo mechanisms, by their very nature, contain memories of past errors, failures, painful and negative experiences. These negative experiences do not inhibit but contribute to the learning process, as long as they are used properly as negative feedback data. Oh, thank you. I'm on a fast right now, that's why. So, these negative experiences do not inhibit but contribute to the learning process, as long as they are used properly as negative feedback data and are seen as deviations from the positive goal which is desired. However, as soon as the error has been recognized as such and correction of course made, it is equally important that the error be consciously forgotten and the successful attempt be remembered and dwelt upon. That is important. These memories of past failures do not harm us as long as our conscious thought and attention is focused upon the positive goal to be accomplished. Therefore, it is best to let these sleeping dogs lie. Our errors, mistakes, failures, and sometimes even our humiliations were necessary steps in the learning process. Amen. However, they were meant to be means to an end, not an end in themselves. Whew. Our errors, mistakes, failures, and sometimes even our humiliations were necessary steps in the learning process. However, they were meant to be means to an end, not an end in themselves. Wow. When they have served their purpose, they should be forgotten. If we consciously dwell upon the error or consciously feel guilty about the error and keep berating ourselves because of it, then unwittingly the error of failure itself becomes the goal, which is consciously held in the imagination and memory. Let's see, we got a comment in here. Our errors, mistakes, and failures, even our humiliations, were necessary steps in the learning process. However, they were not meant to be an end. They were meant to be a means to an end and not an end in themselves. Amen. Very powerful, guys. Anyways, we're going to talk about it. Just 7 more minutes. We're going to talk about it. The unhappiest of mortals is that man who insists upon reliving the past over and over in imagination, continually criticizing himself for past mistakes, continually condemning himself for past sins. I shall never forget one of my women patients who tortured herself with her unhappy past so much that she destroyed any chance for happiness in the present. She had lived for years in bitterness and resentment as a direct result of a serious hair lip that caused her to shun people and to develop over the years a personality that was stunned, crabby, and completely turned against the world and everything in it. She had no friends because she imagined that no one would be friendly with the person who looked so awful. She deliberately avoided people or what Was worse, consistently alienated people with her sour, defensive attitude. Oh my God, I think he's talking about me. Okay. Surgery cured her physical problem. She tried to make the adjustment and to begin to live with people in harmony and friendliness, but found that her past experiences kept getting in the way. She felt that, despite her new appearance, she could not make friends and be happy because no one would forgive her for what she had been before the operation. She wound up making the same mistake she had made before, and she was unhappy as ever. She did not really begin to live until she learned to stop condemning herself for what she had been in the past and to stop reliving in her imagination all the unhappy events that had brought her to my office for surgery. Continually criticizing yourself for past mistakes and errors does not help matters, but on the other hand tends to perpetuate the very behavior you would change. Memories of past failures can adversely affect present performance if we dwell upon them and foolishly conclude, I failed yesterday. Therefore, it follows that I will fail again today. However, this does not prove that unconscious reaction patterns have any power in themselves to repeat and perpetuate themselves, or that all buried memories of failure must be eradicated before behavior can be changed. If we are victimized, it is by our conscious thinking mind and not by the unconscious. For it is with the thinking part of our personality that we draw conclusions and select the gold images that we shall concentrate upon. The minute that we change our minds and stop giving power to the past with its mistakes loses power over us. Y'all, we gonna have fun today. It says, ignore past failures and forge ahead. Here again, hypnosis furnishes convincing proof. When a shy, timid wallflower is told in hypnosis and believes or thinks that he is a bold, self-confident orator, his reaction patterns are changed instantly. He currently acts as he currently believes. He currently acts as he currently believes. His attention is given over completely to the positive desired goal, and no thought or consideration whatsoever is given to past failures. Dorothea Brande tells in her charming book, Wake Up and Live, how this one idea enabled her to become more productive and successful as a writer, and to draw upon talents and abilities she never knew she had. She had been both curious and amazed after witnessing a demonstration in hypnosis. Then she happened to read one sentence written by psychologist F.M.H. Myers, which she says changed her whole life. The sentence by Myers explained that the talents and abilities displayed by hypnotic subjects were due to a purgation of memory. Troy, do you mind looking up this word? Purgation. Purgation. Purgation of memory of past failures while in the hypnotic state. If this were possible under hypnosis, Miss Brande asks herself, if ordinary people carried around within themselves talents, abilities, powers, which were held in and not used merely because of memories of past failures, why couldn't a person in the wakeful state use these same powers by ignoring past failures and acting as if it were impossible to fail? She determined to try it. She would act on the assumption that the powers of abilities were there and that she could use them, if only she could go ahead and act as if, instead of inattentive, half-hearted way. Within a year, her production as a writer had increased many times. So had her sales. A rather surprising result was that she discovered a talent for public speaking, became much in demand as a lecturer, and enjoyed it. Whereas previously she had not only shown no talent for lecturing, but disliked it intensely. So let's see, this sentence said, The talents and abilities displayed by hypnotic subjects were due to the purgation of memory of past failures. So purgation is the purification or cleansing of someone or something. Purgation. So she purified her past failures in her mind. Wow. Talents and abilities displayed by hypnotic subjects were due to a purgation of memory of past failures. Something to learn here today, guys. All right. Next section. Bertrand Russell's method. In his book, Conquest of Happiness, Bertrand Russell says, "I was not happy. As a child, my favorite hymn was Weary of Earth and Laden with Sin. In adolescence, I hated life and I was continually on the verge of suicide, from which, however, I was strained by the desire to know more mathematics. Now, on the contrary, I enjoy life. I might almost say that with every year that passes, I enjoy it more, very largely, and it's due to diminishing preoccupation with myself. Like others who had a Puritan education, I had a habit of meditating on my sins, follies, and shortcomings. I seemed to myself, no doubt justly, a miserable specimen. Gradually, I learned to be indifferent to myself and my deficiencies. I came to center with my attention upon external objects, the state of the world, various branches of knowledge, individuals for whom I felt affection." Bertrand Russell, The Conquest of Happiness. In the same book, he describes his methods for changing automatic reaction patterns based upon false beliefs, and it's quite possible to overcome infantile suggestions of the unconscious, and even to change the contents of the unconscious by employing the right kind of technique. Whenever you begin to feel remorse for an act which your reason tells you is not wicked, examine the cause of your feeling of remorse and convince yourself in detail of their absurdity. Let your conscious beliefs be so vivid and emphatic that they make an impression upon your unconscious strong enough to cope with the impressions made by your nurse or your mother when you were an infant. Do not be content with an alteration between moments of rationality and moments of irrationality. Look into the irrationality closely with the determination not to respect it and not to let it dominate you. When it thrusts foolish thoughts or feelings into your consciousness, pull them up by the roots, examine them, and reject them. Do not allow yourself to remain a validating creature. I need help with this one again. Validating. VACILLATING. Swayed half by reason and half by infantile folly. Wow. Okay. But if the rebellion is to be successful in bringing individual happiness and enabling a man to live consistently by one standard, not to validate, that word comes up again, between two, it is necessary that he should think and feel deeply about what his reason tells him. Most men, when they have thrown off superficially the superstitions of their childhood, think that there is no more to be done. They do not realize that these superstitions are still lurking underground. When a rational conviction When a rational conviction has been arrived at, it is necessary to dwell upon it, to follow out its consequences, to search out in one's self whatever beliefs inconsistent with the new conviction might otherwise survive. What I suggest is that a man should make up his mind with emphasis as to what he rationally believes, and should never allow contrary irrational beliefs to pass unchallenged or obtain a hold over him, however brief. This question of reasoning with himself in those moments in which he is tempted to become infantile, but the reasoning of it is sufficiently empathetic may be very brief. So validate. It says alternative or waver between different opinions or actions, or to be indecisive. So just to recover, right? Do not allow yourself to remain a validating creature. Do not allow yourself to waver or be indecisive. Swayed half by reason and half by infantile folly. And here it says, where's the second word? Second time it said it was down here. It says, if the rebellion is to be successful in bringing individual happiness and in enabling a man to live consistently by one standard, not to validate between two, it is necessary that he should think and feel deeply about what his reason tells him. All right, we're going to just start talking about this chapter because there is so much to unpack. Okay, so I'm saying it wrong. Sounds like validate, not validate. I'm going to let Joy on here. She's been helping us out with getting some...
Hey, everybody. Hey, Liz, I think you're muted. I can't hear you.
Me now?
I can hear you now.
There we go.
Let's go.
All right.
Yes. That word is vacillate.
Vacillate. Okay, so but basically not to be wavering, right? To be decisive, to be clear about what you want. There is so much I want to talk about.
Go ahead, get it started.
Okay, well, number one, what is the name of this chapter again? It says how to utilize the power of rational thinking. That's not even what now it makes sense why that's the title of the chapter. But just number one, the stories we tell ourselves, right? Like, are you constantly retelling yourself a story that is limiting because you failed in the past, or you've had challenges and, humilities and all these things? And it's up to you to choose what you focus on. Are you constantly focusing on the failures, or are you focusing on the things that you desire, right? If we're talking about creating the self-image, and let's say your self-image is the easiest thing I could always think that people could relate to is I want to make more money, right? Maybe not everyone wants to be a millionaire, but maybe you want to make $100,000 a year consistently. Maybe you don't even want to work and you want to be able to make passive income, right? Let's say that's the example. If in the past you've attempted to start a business, you've attempted, to sell things online, and you failed at it, and it was not sustainable, and you were not able to make that dream of making passive income and making $100,000 a year without working. If you were not able to accomplish that by the actions you took, and you constantly focus on, I failed in the past, and this was really hard, of course it's not going to happen, because what you're focusing on persists. What you give energy to grows. Where your attention goes, and energy flows, right? So it would be more empowering to your self-image to focus on the fact that, hey, at least I tried, right? Or as the book suggests, just completely forget about the past and just start anew, right? Use your rational mind, use your clear ability to strive for a goal again, to create a new one. It's okay to fail, right? So let's start there, Joy. Do you want to? Yes, she quoted Carl Jung, "What you resist persists." Yes, exactly.
Yes. So you know what I'm always going to take it back to the system, right? So you know what I think really contributes to this belief that that we get stuck in these thought patterns as if they're permanent and they can't change. Because look at the school system, right? Something that a lot of us have had experience with. It's like you go through a certain grade or even a semester in a certain grade level, and whatever you do during that time basically determines things on your academic record that are permanent. So it's like you get caught up in that belief of the way that things have always been is how they're always going to be, not realizing that there actually is a way to make shifts, and those shifts can be made in the moment. And whatever has happened in the past doesn't have to determine the present moment, and definitely doesn't have to determine what happens in the future. I think that you mentioned the stories that we tell, and it's like when I talk, it's not about changing the past, because we cannot change the events that happen in the past. They happen. Unless you have a time machine, we can talk about that later. But what you can change is what those stories that happened in the past have meant to you, what the meaning of that story is. If it used to be that you perceived it as just a failure, oh, I tried to start a business and it didn't work, and you just look at that as failure, that's one meaning. But in an instant, you can turn that around and decide that you're going to look at that as an indication of what not to do next time. So I learned what not to do. So now when I go to start a business again, I won't repeat those mistakes that I did the first time, because clearly that didn't work.
Right.
And it's just about changing your meaning of it so that you can approach life and yourself from a more empowered place.
And that's exactly what the book was talking about when it said that, these servo mechanisms, they train themselves to know the negative feedback. It's not that they failed. It's like, okay, that's what we don't do, so let's try something else, right?
Yeah.
And I highlighted this quote again because this really spoke to me in understanding that our failures are not the end itself, right? If you didn't win, then it's not the end yet. But most times these failures, these mistakes, these errors, they are a means to an end, right? They need to happen in order for you to grow, in order for you to learn, in order for you to become better. I loved that quote.
That quote was powerful.
Right? I was like, oh, wow, you talking to me. And another thing I highlighted here was just the ability to change your mind, right? To change your mind, make a decision on what you're going to do instead of focusing on like the past, right? People really do live in the past. I don't know about you, Joy, but I know I used to live in the past too. I used to focus on all my failures, focus on all things that went wrong. Even, I started a new life. I started a new life. I'm a new person. And when people will ask me, oh, how did you get there? I would go straight into telling them all the things I failed at, all the things that hurt me, instead of talking about how I built myself up off of that. And it really made a difference when I became aware, instead of always going straight into, oh yeah, well, this one hurt me and this happened to me and woe is me, I was a victim, that's why I changed. Now I took the story and I'm like, yeah, I became a leader in my life. I decided to create for myself. I decided to make a difference. I have a completely different energy, completely different attitude, completely different outlook. And that really is the power of making a decision and changing your focus. Because like we already covered, you cannot change the past, and the past needed to happen. I know plenty of people experience their own hardships in life, and they vary, whether you're in war, in family that went through divorce, a sexual assault victim, you had cancer, you were an orphan. The list goes on and on and on and on. Everyone has their problems. But the reason why you went through it is to help other people that are going to be just like you. Because poor people are never going to go away. Hurt people are never going to go away. But at the end of the day, you can be the person to change your life in order to help those people who are going to come after you to change their life also.
Absolutely. And I want to say more about that part about living in the past, just a different perspective too. Again, bringing it back to the school system, because if y'all been here before, I used to teach in the traditional classroom system. I left, And the school system it programs people on so many different levels. But one of those levels is, going back to the testing and grading system. It's like you look at those grades on your report card or on a test paper, and it feels so permanent. It feels so final. And it's like you can't do anything about that. And then that it could trick you into allowing that to measure your intelligence. You know what I mean? By those levers. So when I taught in the schools, I put myself in the children's perspective, but back in the student shoes, and thought about test taking anxiety. And I reframed it for them and said, this is not a measure of how smart you are or aren't, because we can't measure that on this piece of paper at all. But what it does show us when it comes to this particular piece of content, what you're really good at and what you need work on. So the things that you are really good at, will celebrate those things and celebrate you for, hitting those milestones. But we're going to also have really good information about what you need to work on, so you can master those things too and be good at those things too. And that really helped my students to alleviate so much anxiety about getting things wrong. They felt so much more empowered to raise their hand and participate, knowing that it wasn't so much about a wrong answer. It was more about helping them get to the answers that made the most sense in their lives. And resonated with them so deeply, because learning is personal in that way, and learning is internal in that way. And the school system, I feel like, makes it more external, about hitting these external milestones, which then hypnotizes us into believing that we should be aspiring to things externally.
Thank you for sharing that, because people really do believe, the outside world is it. They believe that this is what you should be striving for, not realizing that the self-image is what creates the outside world. What you believe about yourself is what you see reflected back to you in all your experiences, your circumstances. And the power of this book is getting that understanding that you can change your circumstances, you could change your life, you could change your experience. You have to change yourself first. You have to change what you focus on, what you think about. You have to change the decisions that you're making. All right. I think I'm good for today. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I do. I just want to ask a question, Alyssa, and maybe this is something that we can continue to talk about and just ponder over the next few readings. But what would you say to someone who's having a hard time with just changing their belief system, or just, what you just said, like, you have to recognize that it's what's happening on the inside that is dictating the outside. So what advice would you give, or what tips would you share with someone who's having a hard time seeing that?
Right, accepting that responsibility, because it is difficult. It is difficult to say, I caused all this. I no, I don't want to take responsibility for that. And I think that there just has to be a moment in their life that they're just sick and tired. There has to be pain. There has to be anger around it. And they just have to want different for themselves. And, typically we've allowed ourselves to be comfortable in what we are. We push this agenda of, equality and acceptance, but we're accepting mediocrity. We're accepting less than. We're accepting sickness, pain, war, all these things that cause harm to other people. And it's like, is that really what you want to accept? So I really think there needs to be a sense of self-responsibility. And on top of that, being willing to change your circle. Who are you listening to on a regular basis? Are you listening to your friends and family where they just feed into your victimhood of like, oh, this happened to me, and they're like, oh my God, look at what happened to me, and you guys are just feeding off of that energy? Getting around people who have been in your shoes, who know what it's like, to lose their home, to go broke, go bankrupt, be sick in the hospital, whatever the issue is. Like we just covered, there's people who've experienced hardship too. And if you just ask the question, right, it starts with just looking, because if you seek, you shall find. And figure out who are the people who overcame these circumstances already. Who are the people who were in my situations and they made a better life for themselves? And when the student is ready, the teacher will present itself, right? And then from there, being willing to learn something new and accepting the fact that you don't know everything, right? And if you're really, really struggling, understanding that it's going to take time, right? The key to success is doing the right things consistently and persistently and long enough. Because oftentimes people will try for a week, maybe a few days, maybe even a month. But if you've been living this life of hardship and failure for years, it may take a couple years for you to see progress coming out from where you are, because you're only going to be able to grow your success as high as your foundation is deep. And if you have a lot of uncovering to do and unlearning to do and relearning to do, it may take a while. But if you create an image in your mind for yourself, right, that self-image that is so desirable that you would do anything, that means, like, if you felt like you couldn't breathe and you needed air right now, that feeling that I need that life right now for myself, you're going to do whatever it takes to make it happen. So definitely creating a vision for yourself that you want to work towards no matter what, that you would get up out of the bed every single day and work as hard as you're probably already working, but now you're working towards something that is going to make you feel good. That's the advice I would give to them. Do you have anything you would say?
I love that, girl. No, that was perfect. That was so beautiful, so spot on. I completely agree with you. And I know that, whenever whoever needs to hear that message is going to hear and it's going to land, it's going to really bless somebody. I appreciate you sharing it.
Yes, thank you for asking the question too, because I definitely agree. I've been there before where it's like, but I don't want to. I'm the reason why I was in that relationship. I'm the reason why all these things happened to me. Yeah, Alyssa, it was you. You're the reason why.
Yeah.
And it's hard in the beginning, but once you taste that bit of success, that's another thing I wanted to touch on. That the author brought up. He brought up how the servo mechanism trains itself. Once it tastes success, it's like a cycle. Success creates success, right? You experience success, now you have the first-hand knowledge of what it looks like, what it is, what it feels like, and now you start to create a habit, you create confidence around that habit, and you just keep getting more and more success because now you've experienced it. You have a memory to refer back to and create more similar memories. So she said it also takes a deep level of honesty with ourselves, which takes courage. So remember to give yourself grace. Amen. Thank you for adding that in there, because I think a lot of times we are our worst critic. We're always going to be the hardest on ourselves, harder than anyone is ever going to be on us. And that's because we have to live with ourselves at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And we know when we're doing wrong.
Yeah, we know.
We use our rational thinking. We're like, I probably shouldn't do this, but
right,
whatever.
We got a front row seat, right? Yeah.
Right. Front row seat to our own life. So if you want your life to change, you're going to have to change the things in your life. And we believe in you to do it because we've done it ourselves. And we have a whole community to support you. But thank you so much for the questions, Joy. I love having these conversations with you. I hope you guys are all enjoying it. And is there anything else you want to add for today?
That's it. I just really appreciate you. Thank you so much for reading today and holding this space.
Of course. I love you too. I love all of you watching, and have an excellent night. I'll talk to you guys Friday.